Hey everyone, it's Charla. Welcome back to my channel, and you guessed it, it's movie review time. This is the long-awaited review that I've wanted to, because I watched this video on my break and then rewatched it again to get more of a concept and an idea of it. And the movie I am going to review for you guys, I typed it all on the tablet here, is the movie review of the 1989 film Romero. And you would guess, Romero? I don't think it's a horror film, based, but it's actually a film based on a true story, and I like films like that. So it stars Raul Julia, Richard Jordan, Anna Alicia, Harold Gould, Eddie Velez, Tony Plana. Directed by John Devan, written by John Sacklad Young. Music by Gabriel Yates. Cinematography by Jeff Burton and edited by Franz Vandenberg. Movie starts out in El Salvador in 1977, and the president is giving a speech where crowds of people are gathering. Military personnel are talking on walkie-talkies, and photographers are taking pictures of the people of Salvador, who just want their freedom. Meanwhile, a car approaches and two men get out and greet the people that exit the bus. Then they walk and talk to each other, then stop and stare at a group of people while they give a speech, and the people listen. Then the two priests walk away, then stop and talk some more, and then a boy comes on a bike and shouts, "Father Grande!" And the priests arrive to the military, and the priests talk to the military and try to convince them to let the people vote, and the priests and the people start to walk away. And then the military shoots at the bus tires, so the bus is no longer in use. As they continue to walk to the village, they continue to talk about the Bible and talk about the bishops. Talk about taking Bishop Travis's place. And they continue to walk and decide to sing to the village. Meanwhile, one of the priests goes back to rest, and there is a knock on the door and asks if Oscar is okay, because Raul Julia he's the main character and he plays Oscar Romero, so that's why they're asking if he's okay. He says he's okay and tells Oscar that he is the new bishop, but doesn't take the news well, and the other priest says he will help him. Then two other priests find out and talk about him, and says he may not last long as bishop while he's going over his sermon. Then people congregate into the church, and people are smiling at the new bishop as he prepares his sermon, but he says he has lots more to learn. Then when he finishes his sermon, he then talks with the president and his wife and gives him a cross and takes his cross, so they have to baptize their daughters and agrees. Then another couple asks him to have lunch with them and agree, so they go and talk and feels great in his new footwear, then laughs and jokes with the other priests. Then at night people are gathered around and the priests break bread with the people of El Salvador, and then they clap hands and rejoice and shout freedom, and the military shout on their megaphones to begin to shoot at people and begin to flee. Some of them climb over gates and break the gate open and then run into the church away from the gunmen and hide. Meanwhile, at the president's house, they have a chat about organisations and governments, and a female enters and says it's not business but it's a party, and then exits and then joins the party again and gets introduced to the bishop, where they talk for a brief moment, and then the other priest comes and tells him that the National Guard have came and killed over 70 people, and the bishop wants to leave. but the other priest tells him that he's leaving to be with his people, and leaves the bishop and goes and sees what has happened, and goes to a girl and kneels over her body. Then at the bishop's meeting they talk about the people being on the streets, and Oscar asks for things to be toned down. They all agree. Then the priest baptised some of the babies in the church, and the priest drives away in his car, picks some people up and drives away, and starts to sing and gets followed and are being shot at. Then go over to the car and tells the children to run away, then shoots at the girl who is barely clinging to life, and the other priest dies. Then the bishop rests while two children play doctors and nurses to try and make the bishop feel better, which his temperature is a little high. And then Oscar gets a phone call, and he answers the call and is told of the other priests passing. As night time comes, people are gathered in the street, and Oscar arrives and makes his way past the people into a room, and he sees the other priest and his friends laying on a table deceased. He walks to the table and turns his head and walks off, and people follow him, and the other priest says that Oscar is the one that must do it. Then the priest comes back, and a man asks for his son and sees his little body on the table and says he must be taken home to his mum so she can wash him. The bishop agrees, but insists that they're all buried together, and says there will be no service on Sunday, but will be a big mass and all should be buried together, and says they have all been murdered, and then sees the other priests and are saying that they are all against the bishop's plans. And then the bishop walks away, and then goes to a room and sees a girl crying and asks what is up. So they talk, and he insists on trying to help each other and asks did she know about Father Grande, and asks what he should do, and tells him what to do. Then Oscar talks about the deaths, and people are gathered around to hear his words and say, "Murderers, we love and ask you to repent," and then sees another man and talks to him about a boy, and then gets upset and wants the bishop to help him. So the bishop is going to try and help find the missing people. Then Oscar meets with a lady and her son and has a talk with her, and she asks for Oscar's help and he agrees. Then the bishop talks to two other priests, but they both decline and say they can't. But Oscar says, "You can't or you won't." Then Oscar goes to a hospital where he cares for the sick and the weak, and then a man comes up to him and has a talk. And then at night time, when the military are riding around, and Oscar has been taken into a van, and then talks to men with hoods over the face and asks him if Raphael is to be released, and then takes him to see how they really live. So Oscar sees what he sees and isn't very happy at all. In fact, he feels sad. Then he goes and sees the president and waits for him, but his secretary says he could be hours. Then a lady goes and see what the people of El Salvador are really living, and she goes to a lorry, puts something on the lorry and walks away. Then the president's secretary returns and tells the bishop he didn't return and leaves. Then the bishop talks to the lady, and she snaps at Oscar and then gives him some tea, and they talk some more. Then the president returns and talks with the girl and the bishop and says that they need law and order, and says that the priests are responsible for everything that's going on. Then a boy is collecting things, and a little girl looks on as they find a dead body, so Oscar blesses the body and is taken away. Then gets called names by the president and walks away. Then the girl is crying in the car as the body is taken into the boot of the car, and then drives away. Oscar is suddenly awoken by a knock on the door and goes and sees the father, and they reluctantly go and let them in and ask for a moment alone. And then they talk to each other and say, you met with a gorilla, and to say use electricity, and gives each other a hug. And then a man from the military comes in and says that he can't be released, and Oscar shouts at the military and takes the other priest away and walks out of jail with him. Then the bishop sees the general and tells him what is going on, and the general is trying to say that Oscar and the priests are to blame, but it's not their fault. And then the general gives an order out, but the bishop don't like it at all and tries to reason with them all and calls the general a liar and walks away. Then the Vatican has another meeting, and the bishop is shouting at the Vatican members, but one of the priests agree with him but don't like what he's doing. So the other priest says that this is a scandal and walks away. Then the military take the people of El Salvador away, search them, and then other people gather around and watch the bishop walk and talk with the military members, and that the bishop wants to take care of the people. And one of the military shoots a picture of Jesus and shoots it and tells him to go, and the bishop leaves and then walks back in and kneels before the picture, and the military shoot at him and misses. And then the bishop walks away and goes into a car, drives off, and they drive and then are stopped again and exit the car, and the bishop goes and sees the people and walks with them, and the military hold their guns toward them and are made to be passed aside and walk to the altar and start to do a sermon, and says there are people of God, and that their pain and suffering are the same as what Jesus suffered 2,000 years ago. The bishop goes and visits a girl and talks to her and says she can have a baptism the first week in December, but asks for a private one, and asks him to make an exception, and she says that he has deserted her and walks away. Then Oscar goes to the confession room and talks to someone as they make their confession, and Oscar says just pray for them, and he walks away. Then people gather in the street and greet the bishop, and the bishop gives another sermon. Then the night time comes and the girl has been kidnapped, and the bishop shares a prayer with the nuns and then sings some hymns, and then walks to the church and sees a man from the general and hands him a letter and says, be a patriot, kill a priest. And then Oscar gets angry and shouts at him and then tells him to settle down, and then Oscar gives a sermon and asks to stop the war in El Salvador. Then a girl who was kidnapped is shot execution style and is killed. Oscar is awake due to having a nightmare. Sorry, where was I? It says, and then goes into a car and has been told that they have been shot, and Oscar asks who has been in charge. They try to go in, and then the military tells him that they're dead and asks can the other hostages can be let go, and he says yes if Oscar walks in alone. So he does and talks to the fathers and asks what do they want, and they say a new government, and then tells Oscar that they have killed the girl, and Oscar says someone needs the courage to say enough is enough, and they say to ask them to put their guns down and to let them go. So they walk out with the hostages and walk past the military, but they say enough is enough and are all arrested, including Oscar. So Oscar has been arrested and is put in a cell while military surround the cell, and Oscar shouts as he hears the others being tortured and shouts we're all human beings, and covers his ears and crouches down and says we're all human beings. Then the military talk to Oscar and says there has been a mistake and we will let you out soon, and that he should be afraid for his life. And Oscar says he's not leaving without the others, but gets released and goes to be prepared. So Oscar asks if he believes in God, and why does he carry a gun? So he says that he needs a gun to protect himself and argue with each other over guns and murders, and that there will be no end to this bloodshed as he has no other choice. Then Oscar walks to 3 graves and then walks back, goes to his knees and says he can't, but he must, and that he is yours, and to show him the way, and goes to the village, and the military gathers the people around and searches him, has nothing, and tells him to strip, and reveals nothing, then looks around and says, let's celebrate the mass now, and begins his sermon. Then a man talks about living the way the Americans do, and they cheer for him. Oscar delivers his sermon to all people, and the military still thinks that the church are with the guerrillas, but that's not the case, and Oscar gives another sermon, but tries to reach out to the military, but the leader of the military loads up his gun, and Oscar orders them to stop the repression and gives out bread and wine. Then someone with a gun goes to the church and shoots Oscar, and the nuns run to his aid. But unfortunately, Oscar Romero was murdered on the 24th of March 1980, as he had spoken the disturbing truth, but many had chosen not to listen. As a result, between 1980 and 1989, more than 60,000 people of El Salvador were killed. But the struggle for peace and freedom, justice and dignity goes on. Many people are walking away to see if they can get freedom that they deserve, as Oscar knew that he was going to be killed, but he said that his soul lives among the El Salvador people. Wow, that was a long review. My thoughts on the whole film. Wow, I was just blown away by the start to finish. Raul Julia, this role was made for him, and I just like the whole concept that it was based on a true story, and how can I explain? I just like the fact that some films in that way need to be told in the way that it should be told, like that. And that's all I could say about the film, because I can't just say the film was really good. I've got to say that the film was good start to finish, and the whole concept and the idea that because it was based around the true story, it was based with like the Vatican and the church and stuff like that, it just takes you on the edge of the seat, and to remind you that even still today, that some people all around the world are suffering with the conflict and the war and the terror and stuff to do with the church and stuff like that. So it's a great film, and it's a great concept to go with that film as well. So there we go. Rating out of 10. I'm going to give it a 9, because it was a great, fantastic film, but it wasn't perfect. There was still little bits that were missing, even though it was 27 years old. It's still, that was good for its time. So, yep. Hope you enjoyed the review, and I'll see you soon. Bye.